The question of whether Chief Obafemi Awolowo betrayed Colonel Emeka Ojukwu before and during the Nigerian Civil War is a highly debated topic. On May 6, 1967, Awolowo, the leader of the Yoruba people, met with Ojukwu, the military governor of the Eastern region in Enugu, to prevent a looming war. Chief Awolowo had declared 5 days before, on May 1, 1967, that if the East seceded, the Yoruba people of the Western region would follow suit and also declare their independence from Nigeria. In response, the military head of state, Colonel Yakubu Gowon, announced the creation of 12 states from the 4 regions 26 days after Awolowo's declaration, while Ojukwu announced the independence of the Eastern region 3 days later on May 30, 1967 to form the Republic of Biafra. Awolowo did not. Instead, the Yoruba chief joined the federal military government to fight Ojukwu and Biafra. In fact, as the vice chairman of the Federal Executive Council and Federal Commissioner of Finance, Awolowo played a crucial role in the war that left Biafra economically devastated. But did Awolowo betray Ojukwu? Let's find out. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon warned that he would deal sternly with Ojukwu, who was at the time provoking and bullying Nigeria with secession, basing his actions on the agreement reached at Aburi. Gowon later threatened a forceful liberation of the 5 million non-Igbos in the East in his October 1, 1967 broadcast to the nation. However, Colonel Adeyinka Adebayo, the military governor of the Western region, and Lieutenant Colonel David Ejo, the military governor of the Midwest, were known to have criticized Gowon against the use of force, arguing that the one caveat in the Aburi Agreement was that force would not be used to settle the Nigerian crisis. Adebayo cautioned Gowon further on behalf of the Yoruba people, whose spearheaded role for a peaceful resolution of the political crisis had started to cause some ripples. In short, the colonel was completely against the use of force. But on July 6, 1967, the first shot was fired and the Civil War began. It would last for 30 grueling months. On August 9, 1967, a month later, the commander of Biafra's National Liberation Army, Colonel Victor Banjo, invaded and captured Benin City and began his march to Yoruba land in a rapid offensive of the Biafran Expeditionary Force. However, Awolowo warned Banjo that he should strike off the Western region from Ojukwu's expansionary Biafran project. Nevertheless, Banjo delayed in Benin over an argument on who should govern the region. This gave Nigeria enough time to rally troops to launch a counter-offensive led by Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Muhammad. Ojukwu felt betrayed by Banjo and accused him of plotting a coup with Emmanuel Ifeajuna and others. It was a betrayal that cost them their lives. Banjo, who was later executed in Biafra after a second military judge found him guilty of coup charges, was to be appointed military governor of Western Nigeria if Biafran troops had arrived and liberated Yoruba land. Banjo later accused Awolowo of siding with the Northerners. In the events leading up to the Civil War, Chief Obafemi Awolowo proclaimed that his people would bend all their physical, mental, and spiritual energies to make it impossible for a single rebel troop to set foot on an inch of Yoruba soil. On May 6, 1967, the National Conciliation Committee, led by Awolowo, in the company of Chief Samuel Jerete Marere, the first governor of the Midwest region, Chief Obafemi, the former Minister of the Navy, and Dr. Sam Aluko, the foremost economist, paid a visit to Enugu to negotiate with Ojukwu. The uncompromising Ojukwu made it abundantly clear to Awolowo and his group that there was nothing to negotiate outside the Abure agreements. On Abure we stand, Ojukwu roared. Because Awolowo was deeply committed to reconciliation, he persuaded and cajoled Ojukwu, urging the East to relent a little bit for the sake of goodwill in the country. In an interview he granted in 2011, Aluko, one of the members of the committee, said that Awolowo told Ojukwu he could not secede and that the East could not go alone. Just as the East fears the North, the West also fears the North, Awolowo said. The soldiers in the North are occupying the West, so we have the same common interest. But don't let us secede. Let us do whatever we can do together to unite and confront the North so that we can have a settlement on how we want to run this country, the Yoruba chief concluded. But Ojukwu rebuffed Awolowo and bragged about being battle-ready and that the East had the biggest army in Black Africa. It then dawned on Awolowo that it would be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than convincing Ojukwu to tread the path of peace. In his book, Why We Struck, Adewale Ademoyega, one of the January coup plotters who later fought for Biafra, accused Ojukwu and called him a soldier statesman pretender. Ademoyega said Ojukwu arrogated all power, will, decision, and direction to himself, and that other Nigerians meant little or nothing to him as soon as he got all he wanted from them. Meanwhile, 5 days before traveling to the East to visit Ojukwu with his team, Awolowo met with the Yoruba leaders of thought at the Western Hall, Agodi, Ibadan, on May 1, 1967, to pass a resolution that the West stood for a peaceful solution to the Nigerian crisis and would not be party to any attempt to impose a military solution or the use of force. Also, the East should be kept within the Federation on a basis which recognized the mutual interests of all the regions, even if it meant a loose constitutional arrangement. Awolowo further stated that if any region seceded, the Nigerian Federation would cease to exist and the Western region would automatically become independent and sovereign. According to Aluko, Awolowo's statement that if the East left the Federation, the Yoruba would have to leave the Federation had been misconstrued by some to say that Awolowo assured Ojukwu that if he seceded, the Yoruba would join. Aluko said what Awolowo meant was that what made the Igbo leave the Federation would also make the Yoruba leave, but that it was against the will of the Yoruba to leave the Federation. Awolowo, while preaching unity, also stated that every region was entitled to rule Nigeria because nobody had the monopoly to rule the country. In Enugu, Awolowo informed Ojukwu that if there were no northern troops stationed in the west, the position of the Yoruba would have been different. However, Awolowo summoned the courage to tell Gowon to remove his force of occupation in Yoruba land, but it was futile. After the discussions failed with Ojukwu, Awolowo resolutely refused Ojukwu's request for a one-on-one with him in the guest house, insisting there must be witnesses, to which Ojukwu graciously agreed. Ojukwu then told Awolowo that the East had decided to secede and there was no going back. All that was left was the announcement of a date. The Awolowo committee had failed from the onset. But Awolowo made one request of Ojukwu and insisted on it, asking that the West should have a minimum of 2 weeks' notice before the announcement of the secession, which Ojukwu reportedly promised. The next morning, Awolowo then departed Enugu with the thought that the Eastern menace had at least been suspended. But the Yoruba chief knew that Biafra was on the cards. He did not expect Ojukwu to make an immediate announcement as he did. But it should not have been any surprise. A prospective war leader who reviews a decision of such strategic significance to a prime decision maker of an enemy side should not be expected to wait a moment longer than necessary to preempt a counterforce. Nevertheless, on May 30, 1967, Ojukwu broke his promise to Awolowo and proceeded to proclaim an independent state of Biafra. The announcement, for sure, annoyed Awolowo, who later accepted his appointment as Gowon's vice chairman of the Federal Executive Council and Federal Commissioner for Finance before the war. However, Ojukwu and Awolowo did not agree on any decision about what to do if Ojukwu waited. We do not know what Awolowo could have done either. Despite this, Chief Awolowo continued to plead for the encouragement of the Eastern region's continued stay within the Nigerian Union until the eve of the Civil War. But was a Yoruba secession possible even if Awolowo had insisted? That would be a challenge since the Yoruba at that time lacked the needed military presence in the army to confront the occupying forces. There was little they could have done. The Yoruba leaders had actually demanded the withdrawal of the federal troops from their territory to enable them to carry out their scheme of secession. It was actually on account of that demand that the federal authorities announced on Thursday, May 25, 1967, that the northern troops would be withdrawn from the western region. Chief Awolowo, whose portrait adorns Nigeria's 100 naira notes, and despite his roles during the Civil War, was acclaimed by Ojukwu as the best president that Nigeria never had at his death on May 9, 1987. Ojukwu went further to say Awolowo had a dream for the Yorubas and was steadfast in the pursuit of that dream. He knew where he was going and he took his people with him without deceit. Having already accused the North of increasingly maltreating the country with its military upper hand, Chief Awolowo asked Gowon to withdraw northern troops stationed in Lagos and the western region. But Gowon resolved that he would not accept responsibility for the result of withdrawing northern troops from Lagos and the west, which led some army officers from Lagos to surreptitiously approach him to complain that Chief Awolowo, whose role during the crisis was clearly borne by courage and firmness of will, was in no position to act as a spokesman for Lagos. But Awolowo succeeded despite all the odds, especially the absence of Yoruba rank and file in the army, to chart an independence course for the West during the crisis. In fact, many believed that Chief Awolowo's principled stand restrained some northern hawks in the army, such as Colonel Murtala Mohammed, who wanted to march on Enugu right away to thrash Ojukwu and call off his bluff. All the same, the northern leaders, rather than intercede, also encouraged Gowon in their own resolution, which equally listed their support for state creation as well as a re-establishment of civilian rule in the country by 1969 to be decisive in dealing with Ojukwu's obdurate secession bid. But on his part, Awolowo called for restraint and warned the warmongers, even before he visited Ojukwu in Enugu, that he should give peace a chance. Like Colonel Adebayo's earlier alarm and caution to those spoiling for a fight, Chief Awolowo's warning also went unheeded. So, did Chief Awolowo betray Colonel Ojukwu? The simple answer is no. Awolowo's inability to carry out his threat of secession if the East seceded could not be interpreted as betrayal. Beyond sentiment, objective judgment agrees that secession can never occur without a backup military force, which the Yoruba did not have. Again, it is wrong to continue to maintain that Chief Awolowo encouraged the Igbo to secede. In actual fact, the crisis had been strained beyond the breaking point, and the Easterners needed to secede for their physical and psychological survival and mental sanity. According to Ademoyega, the situation reached a boiling point when the Northerners pulled off the September-October program against the Igbo throughout the northern region, which made the Civil War inevitable. If anything, it completely put a seal on the grim determination of Ojukwu to pull Easterners out of Nigeria. Interestingly, by creating Lagos State among the 12 states and appointing Awolowo as his vice chairman, Gowon effectively erased the thoughts or feeling that the West also wanted to secede. That action eventually led to the splitting of Yoruba minds towards secession, particularly since the indigenes of the new Lagos State saw their new status as a freedom from the domineering image of Chief Awolowo. Gowon's initial plan was to create states in the eastern region only. Such action was considered impolitic and fraught with danger. Eventually, 12 states were created throughout the country on May 27, 1967. The current situation was already very frustrating for Colonel Ojukwu, and he appeared not capable of stomaching the aggravation. With very little choice left to him, Ojukwu rebelled against Nigeria by proclaiming the Sovereign Republic of Biafra on May 30, 1967, to counter Yakubu Gowon's state creation announcement 3 days before. 1 month and 6 days later, the Civil War broke out. Nigeria would never be the same again.